Hey guys, this is the Grand Tournament TGT Arena Meta Preview. I'm Adwikta, and today we're covering the Warrior, Priest, and Hunter. We've talked before about a lot of overall themes that you're going to see in the arena. We talked about the meta getting slower, we talked about how the Inspire mechanic works, how the Joust mechanic works. But today I want to talk a little bit, I want to start off with a little bit about what other things are affected just by pure dilution, because we haven't really covered too much about dilution, and dilution is going to start playing a big part in today's analysis. So dilution is what happens in the arena when you add cards. As soon as you add a group of cards, all of the other cards' offering rates drop a little. And if you're doing something like TGT, where you're adding a third of the cards compared to what we had before, well then dilution is going to have a huge effect on all of the cards. If you see Flame Strikes 1/3 as often, that's assuming you always pick Flame Strike before, that's going to affect the meta. Even more importantly, if you see 2-drops at a certain rate, and we just got a little less 2-drops than we're typically used to having, well now maybe everyone drafts about half less 2-drops, so that if 2-drops are as important, then all the 2-drops would get raised. And on the other hand, if 2-drops are not as important because the meta's all slowing down, everyone's playing a late game, and 2-drops are a little too bad for card advantage for you to really need 6, as kind of was the case in GVG and BRM, well maybe then the 2-drops stay where they are and we just all take a little less 2-drops. That kind of stuff is a little hard to predict, but that's the concept of dilution. And the place where you're going to see it and feel it the most is actually most likely not going to be drops, and it's also most likely not going to be Flame Strike, although the Flame Strike rate, it's going to be noticeable. Where you're going to see the biggest dilution in the entire game, and I don't think anyone's really talking about it, because I don't think people think about the arena as much as they do Constructed, it's that there's no mechs. I don't know why people aren't like ringing the bell here. We have released 132 cards. There's one mech. It's the Clockwork. I don't even know what the guy's called. It's a 5/5 for 5 mana, common, +1/+1, 2 mechs. It's a good card. It's definitely a good card, and it does give one more card that actually buffs mechs, which there used to be only 2. One's a mech warper, really a mech warper, not a spider tank, and the other one was a Tinkertown. Now you have 3, and that's good. So the things buffing mechs is going to actually increase, or at the very least stay consistent. But the actual mechs, the basis upon which you can do these buffs, they haven't gone up. And if you don't add mechs with this expansion, you're reducing the amount of mechs. So we're going to see a huge hit in mechs. And on the other side, we're going to see a decent amount of beasts still, and in the Druid class especially, you're going to see a significant increase in the amount of beasts. And when we talk about the Warlock, you'll see a significant increase in the amount of demons as well. So that's all good and well, but let's just keep that in the back of our minds as we go forward. I just realized it was something that we hadn't covered before, and we're going to have a little extra time today, because these are not classes that require too deep to be delved into, and I thought I'd just cover that topic. But let's start with the Warrior and Bolster. Bad card. We know it's a bad card, and this is one of the main reasons why we started Arena Warriors Matter in the first place, is because of cards like Bolster, and we don't know why it's common, we don't know why it's in the arena. On average, after factoring in all the dilution and all of that, and the Evil Heckler, which is a taunt card, and a pretty good taunt card, you're going to have somewhere between 2 and 2.5 taunts. And Warrior doesn't have a class common that's a taunt or anything either. So you're not going to be able to bolster multiple minions. You're probably not going to be able to bolster a real minion in the first place. So, a very bad card. Omrigar Aspirant, a little too slow, and you need the weapon out, and then you need to Inspire, which slows you down a little more. So, again, not a very good card. But there's kind of a silver lining to all of this, which is that the Warrior has been getting such bad class cards that these, well, not Bolster, but Omrigar Aspirant, for example, would be kind of the second best class card the Warriors received in the entire last year. And Bash is not awful. It's actually, I wouldn't say it's good, but it's kind of a little above average. even though it has really bad board effects for its mana cost, once you factor in the fact that something very good for the warrior, and the warrior always struggles with, is the ability to deal damage from another source besides their weapons, because the weapon takes one slot. So unlike other classes where you can use 2 removals in one turn or ping and do a removal, the warrior kind of doesn't have that option unless you have like an inner fire, or not an inner fire, inner rage, or a cruel taskmaster, or a slam, or a cleave, like one of those cards. There's not a huge pool of those cards, and bash would be the biggest of those cards. So being able to deal 3 damage while holding a weapon is very important, not just so that you can hit 2 things from your hand, but because this allows you to save your weapon, right? So you don't have to throw that Arcanite Reaper into his 2/3 just to like do something on the board. That's going to be very important, and the 3 armor also doesn't hurt. So this is actually, like, the more I think about bash, the more I think it's an okay card. Don't get me wrong, the warrior still has this, bash being the best common class card the warrior is getting in TGT is still going to be the worst of any class, but it's not as bad as you might think. And this is the warrior for the 3rd time in a row getting the worst common cards. Yes, this is worse than the priest, which we will get to in a bit. But the next thing we're going to talk about is sorry guys, it's like 2:30 a.m. The next thing we're going to talk about are the rares for the warrior. Alexstrasza's Champion, we've covered already. Sparring Partner is one of the new cards released, and I really like the design on it, right? He like picks out a guy to spar with, and you both get taunt. Like, you could pick your opponent's minion so that you can hit it if it was hiding behind a taunt to begin with, or you could pick your own minion to taunt a bit more. And between these 2 cards, the warrior was in such a bad place. Like, just to understand how bad of a place the warrior was in before TGT, the warrior averaged, if you just go straight down our tier list, the warrior averaged 5.12 drops. If you were to draft a deck, you would be expected to have 5.12 drops by the end of the draft. A warrior having the worst hero power in the game, you know, especially on turn 2, needs more than 5.12 drops. They need significantly more than 5.24 drops, 5.22 drops, and they have the lowest 2-drop rate outside of. They have the lowest 1-drop plus 2-drop rate, right? Like, Warlock has a lower 2-drop rate, but they have so many 1-drops that it makes up for it. So if you just add 1-drops and 2-drops together, warriors always have the lowest rate. But on the bright side, like, the silver lining to that is that the 2-drop rate isn't going to fall, even though they didn't get a class common that's a 2-drop, and even though overall, as a whole, the common neutrals 2-drops have dropped a little bit. And that's just because they got 2 rare 2-drops that are pretty decent, right? Alexstrasza's Champion is a 2/3, very solid, and then if you play it, if you get it in the late game and play it, it's a 2 mana, 3 damage card once you get your dragon, which is pretty good. Sparring Partner is a 3/2 with a taunt. That's already very good, and then it taunts another minion. So these are good rares, and so their goodness makes you draft them, and the warrior's initial badness kind of come together so that warrior actually gets a little more consistent on the 2-drops in TGT, which once we ran it through the Hearth Arena system, it became very obvious that this was indeed the case, and that makes me feel a little bit better about the warrior. It didn't seem like it at first, right, because these are not commons, but it seems to have worked out in the end to not make the warrior as horrible as we thought it was going to be. And King's Defender, kind of like a 3-drop, so that the 3-drop consistency also doesn't go down. It actually goes up. And it goes up because, remember, we were talking about before, there's a whole bunch of 3-drops being added in TGT, and Warrior never had a 3-drop. It had Frothing Berserker, which was also a rare, and now King's Defender is a rare. And it's only kind of a drop. You don't really want to play it on turn 3. But so Warrior curving out actually got a little better. That being said, the value of all of these cards are still not great, right? There's no blowout punch that'll actually get the Warrior back in the game. It's still going to be the worst class in the arena. But it's not going to be as broken as we had feared. Does this mean Arena Warriors Matters is no longer a thing? Of course not. It's still the worst class, and it's still getting worse, right? It's just getting slightly worse instead of, oh my god, worse, which was kind of the fear when we first saw these cards. But now, with a little time and running through our system, we're moving on to the acceptance stage. We think it's going to be okay for the Warrior in the arena. And okay, I guess I'm going to go over Magnetar Alpha. Again, not a good card just because you can kill it really easily. But if you do, if it does stick around for one turn, you get a 2-for-1 very easily with this card. So it's kind of a pretty big swing card. But who's not going to kill something with 3 health, right? I have very little faith in this card sticking around. And the Sea Reaver, this is not as bad as people think. People think, oh no, you're going to damage your minions. Your opponent's not going to leave you with a minion with 1 health. They're just not going to do that. So yeah, it's not good. Generally, you don't want to deal damage to your minions, but between all the synergies of pinging your own minions the Warrior has, it's actually not like that bad. It's only slightly worse than a Boulder Fist Ogre. But they're both epics. They're not going to be of a huge deal in the arena. What I wanted to talk about was that the Warrior meta, that the meta of the arena, Mage aside, because Mage is going to be better, so we may see it even a little more, and that's going to freeze the Warrior a little bit because of Water Elemental and Snow Chugger, and that's bad. But generally speaking, despite Warriors not having a hard removal, Execute aside, and Execute is only kind of a hard removal, a slower meta is generally good for the Warrior compared to the current meta, because we're afraid of getting overwhelmed as a Warrior player. We don't have ways to clear the board. We also have no hard removal, and we have no crowd control. We have no multi-removal, just cleave. We're kind of in this weird spot as the Warrior. So the fact that it's getting a little slower is good for the Warrior because we were weak on the flooding side as well. And on top of that, being a little slower means we have a couple more turns later on to armor up so that we can actually use our big weapons. That's one of the issues with the current meta, how it's treating the Warrior. And on top of all of that, what I'm really excited as a Warrior player is that only 1 taunt was added. And that taunt only has 4 health. It's an Evil Heckler. In the rares and the commons that will be impactful. Only 1 taunt. And the dilution effect is going to have this big effect on the arch nemesis of the Warrior, which are Sunwalker, Sludge Belcher, and Annoyotron. Basically, if your opponent plays those cards in today's meta, that's the equivalent of them playing a Water Elemental or a Snow Chugger while they have the board and you have no way to remove it. You just lose. And those cards are all going to see dilution. And even the Mage, right? Like, yeah, the Mage got better, and you're going to see more Mages, but you're going to see less Water Elementals, and you're going to see less Snow Chuggers because of the dilution. So those are all positive developments for the Warrior. And I think they're a little underrated right now. Like, people know that that's what's happening, but they haven't quite absorbed the exact scale and percentage to which that is going to happen. And once all of this is taken into account, Warrior comes out to be in an okay place compared to where they were before. Like, they're not going to get significantly worse. I'm now convinced of it, which is good, because if they really got worse, it would anyway. The one question that I get a lot is, oh, you should review legendary cards. They're so fun, or I just care about them, even though we're not going to see a lot of them. And I think it's kind of a waste of time. You're going to see them when the tier list comes out. And if you want to ask us questions about that, we'll tell you. But we are never very comfortable reviewing legendaries, and we're not very comfortable adjusting them because we just don't use them a lot. We're arena players. We don't even use them in constructed because we don't play constructed. And in the arena, you rarely see legendaries, or except the very top ones, you rarely see legendaries, and you also very rarely get a legendary. But I will answer this question, which is, what is the #1 legendary? What is the best legendary card in TGT? It's Varian Rin. It's Varian Rin by a long shot. And that's because, just look at these stats. You draw 3 cards, 2 of them are going to be minions. They're going to average to be about 4 mana cards. You may get a big one. It's just so overstated for the arena. And And Blizzard knows, right? So Varian Rin in Warcraft lore, if you guys didn't know, he was an arena gladiator, and he was one of the best arena gladiators, if not the best. And his little flavor text says Varian Rin gets 12 wins in the arena every time. This card's going to help you get 12 wins. It's going to help a lot. So now we're going to move on to the Priest. Talked about Flash Heal before. This is a really good card design, I think. Priest just needs more stuff to heal. It doesn't heal enough. It doesn't have enough cards to heal. And in the arena, even if you had crappy cards like Flash Healed, crappy cards like Power Word Glory, which is kind of a soft removal for your face, right? Like you Power Word Glory your opponent's minion, and they can't deal face damage to you anymore in Constructed. In arena, you're going to drop minions too, and then they'll just trade into your minions, so it doesn't do all that much. But they're healing cards, and I like Priest having more healing cards, because they'll at some point be forced to actually take healing cards. But what people aren't realizing, this is what I feel very strongly about this, and I'm going to spoil a tier list valuation right now, is the Holy Champion. Everyone says, oh, Priest got worse, they got such bad cards. Well, in the arena, everyone is sleeping on Holy Champion, because Holy Champion is going to be a better than Yeti common 4-drop. That is an amazing thing to have as the Priest. And why is it better than a Yeti? It's because it has 5 health just like a Yeti, and as the Priest, you're not worried about killing things on the first turn so much as you're worried about having something stick on the board. So this is just as good as Yeti on sticking on the board, and on top of that, if it does stick on the board, you can instantly turn around the game without even using like a Valens or some other like buff, because it buffs itself. You just kind of have to attack into a minion, one of your opponent's smaller minions that it was using to bug you with, heal your Holy Champion up, and all of a sudden you have a 5-5, you have a 5-4, 5-3, and you're matched up against your opponent's big minion. That is such a huge 2-for-1 swing. And the Holy Champion gets that. If you get a Yeti, and you eat your opponent's minion and then you heal your Yeti back up to 3, your opponent's Yeti is going to eat your Yeti. That doesn't solve the problem. The Holy Champion solves the problem. Yeah, you have to heal, but you want to heal anyway, right? As the Priest going to turn 5, or maybe you play a 5-drop, but it gives you the option, and that in and of itself makes it better than the Yeti. So the Priest is going to get this huge boost in consistency in the mid game with this card, this very good card. But an important point to note about the Priest is that the dilution effect is going to be pretty big for the Priest. Because they had originally curved out very well with a top 2-drop and a top 3-drop, and those are all going to be diluted down, and there's nothing to replace them. There's no 1-drop, no 2-drop, no 3-drop, so the whole curve for the Priest is going to be a little more iffy. And as the Priest, you need to get stuff on the board, so that's going to hurt the Priest a little, but not it's not going to hurt it so much. Why is it not going to hurt it so much? Because the whole game is moving to be more slower, like a turn slower, maybe even more than a turn slower. And that's obviously good for the Priest, who have a lot of good late game cards, whose hero power is much better in the late game, and Shadow Word Death. Shadow Word Death is moving up 6 points on the tier list. It's moving up 6 points on the tier list for pretty much the only reason that there's going to be more targets for Shadow Word Death than there are right now. And more targets for Shadow Word Death means it's stuck in your hand less. And also bigger targets. If you Shadow Word Death a 5-drop, that's kind of your ideal target, right? And there's just going to be good 5-drops now. We've talked about it before. So Shadow Word Death is going to be better. Mind Control is going to be less of a, oh my god, am I going to get to use it? Or more of a, oh yeah, of course I'm going to get to use it. How greedy do I want to be with Mind Control? Sorry, did I say Mind Control tech? I just meant Mind Control. So everything's moving in the Priest way. Priest is one of those classes, right? Like, it can snowball out of control. So I really like the fact that Priest actually has a dilution effect on its earlier drops. So now it's going a little back to its old struggle, its classic struggle, which is to actually find a way to get onto the board in the very early game. Instead of now, where Priests are actually very good at curving out. And you kind of have to like try to grab a hold of the mid game. So forcing Priests into a weakness, right? Back into their old weakness a little bit. I like that. Anything else I want to talk about for the Priest? Oh yeah, we have more cards to go through. Convert. It's like a Mind Vision, except you can pick your target, but then your opponent has to play the target, and then it costs 1 more mana. So it's not as good as Mind Vision. Wormrest Agent. Wormrest Agent. Another dragon card, so priests have more dragon synergies now, but a 1/4 is not that great, even as a 2-drop. It's not awful, but it's not great, and you're probably going to end up just holding this card until you get a dragon, and then you get a 2/4 taunt, which is a decent stat distribution as far as taunts go, but you know, not a terribly exciting card. And Spawn of Shadows. 5/4, totally serviceable. Inspire, deal 4 damage to your enemy hero. If you're getting low on health, it only deals 2 health to you. So that kind of balances it out, but it's not like Shadow Priest is ever going to work, right? I don't really like this card because it's a rare card and it gives the priest 4 damage of reach, and possibly more than that. And one of the things you count on as the priest is you have this Holy Fire card that deals 5 damage, and besides that, it's just your neutral cards. So you're generally safe from 4 damage. I kind of only worry about 2 damage when I'm facing the priest, and now this kind of puts a little, kind of moves into the space, right? But if they're trying to make Shadow Priest happen and constructed, it's just going to move into this space more and more, and I think we're going to have to accept it. A couple more cards. Shadow Fiend and Confuse. Confuse we've talked about before. I'm not going to go into it. Shadow Fiend is like a weird version of a turn 3 pint-sized summoner. Turn 3 is better than turn 2 to have this card, and the problem is it's a little less flexible. But you don't have to curve out immediately, right? The card that you draw can be comboed later on. And priests have some good combos. But let's move on to the Hunter. The Hunter is the second worst class in the arena right now. Despite the whole entire meta being pretty fast, normal players play a lot worse with the Hunter than good players. There's a pretty big difference in there. And especially with good players who know how to play the Hunter. For me personally, I think Hunter's like pretty middle of the line. And a lot of Infinite players I know feel that way, especially people who are more comfortable playing aggro and temple style. But that's about to change, right? I like to play Hunter flexible in a flexible way. Mid-range, you know, you always have the win condition of your hero power, and you make that turn and you go face. But you can also feel comfortable out card advantage your opponent if they're too afraid of you going face, right? So you can kind of play off how they play you. That's how I like to play, and I'm going to really like the Hunter because the TGT is doing exciting, wonderful things for a Hunter. And if you're a Hunter player now and you like the Hunter now, you may not like these changes actually because they're kind of weird. So Brave Hunter, normal 1-drop, you're rarely going to empty out your hand, and if you do, you get 2 more damage, but this 1-drop has to stay alive. It's very iffy, right? A little more consistency on the 1-drop side though, so that's always a good sign for the Hunter. And it's good to see Blizzard kind of giving Hunter an aggro card. They're not totally ditching the face Hunter. Bear Trap. Yeah. Whereas when we were talking about the secret for the Paladin, we said, oh, you would not play it the same way, right? Like when you have the competitive spirit out and Avenge, it really plays mind games with your opponent. Bear Trap doesn't do that, not really. Your opponent may not hit you in the face if they can't take care of a bear. That's about it. They already probably won't hit you in the face if they have 2 health or less because of the explosive trap. Now they can't have 3 health or less unless they at least have like 3 damage. So maybe a Croc also wouldn't trigger your explosive traps anymore. But generally, this is more like Effigy. It doesn't make a big difference. And it's not a good card. It comes out with a 3/3 taunt, which yes, it's more mana than that, but typically it won't come out. Your opponent just won't hit your face. Yeah, it doesn't affect your opponent's thought process through secrets either. But this is the ball game, right? King's Elec. It's a 3/2, it's a beast, it's a Croc, that's already good for a Hunter, getting more consistency in the 2-drop slot. I had always complained that Hunter had no 2-drop. Right? Hunter, Warrior had no 2-drop and no 1-drop. Not a real 1-drop. Web Spinner, kind of a vague 1-drop, right? Fury Warax, Glaive-Zuka, vague 2-drops. Not really. It's not like a Flame Imp, at least, right? That's a 1-drop. Now, Hunters have a 2-drop. They're going to curve out pretty well now. They're going to curve out as well as the Priest now. And better, actually, because of the Glaive-Zuka as a backup 2-drop. And King's Elec, very, very early on in the game, right? You'll know whether King's Elec triggered or not if you play it early on in the game. And so you'll know whether you have 1 extra card than your opponent. And it's not even going to be a normal extra card. This extra card is the card that wins the joust, which means this extra card is the big card. It is a 5-drop. It is a 6-drop. You're not going to play it for a while, but it means from that point on, you can start rethinking your strategy. Maybe you wanted to be aggro before, but if you had one more large card than your opponent, you are at a huge advantage, and you kind of are okay slowing down even if you have a fast deck. If you have a mid-range deck, you can really try to play your opponent on the card advantage side now. And your opponent, on the other hand, has the opposite thing, right? Like, he sees what you draw. He sees the exact card that you put into your hand. So if he sees, like, a Sunwalker go into your hand, he may be like, all right, well, maybe I'm not going to last into the late game with this guy. Maybe I thought I could because he's a hunter and I'm kind of a slow mid-range mage, but now I'm rethinking about it, and he has one extra card on me. That's a pretty big deal in the arena, because the difference between a fairly aggro deck and a kind of control deck is maybe 2 cards, maybe 3 cards. So getting a 1-card swing for nothing, for totally free, no tempo loss at all, is a huge deal. And it actually shifts the way both player plays, and I really like that. I hate the fact that it's RNG, right? So that's why it's a stupid card. But I like that it shifts how both players react. And so a good player and a bad player will react to this in a very different way. And you know what card they draw. So you can really react to this properly. So it's not controllable RNG, but you have a long period of time to react to the RNG. So I don't like this as RNG, but it's going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be fun, and it's going to... the RNG part is going to be somewhat countered by the skill part that brings to it. So I kind of like this. And in line with the, oh my god, Hunter cards are getting really powerful, Power Shot. Like, for all intents and purposes, this is a 3-mana Consecration. It's rare, right? You're not going to see it all the time. But still, it's one of the more insane rare cards. And Hunter gets it. So good for the Hunter. While other classes aren't really getting removals, and that's one of the other good things about the Warrior Bash card, right? It's not a good removal, but at least it's getting removals. And half the class aren't getting removals right now, so. Power Shot, though. Oof. And now positioning becomes even more important for Hunter. So in that sense, you know, no class convergence there. Positioning always important for Hunter. Let's keep going here. Ram Wrangler is, like, just to give you an idea of how bad this card is. An average beast is a 4/4. If you trigger the Ram Wrangler onto the board, you get a 3/3 and a 4/4 on average. And it's RNG, and you don't want that. That's only 1/1 more than just a Silverhand Knight that you can play at any time. I mean, it's just a bad card. I don't know what they were thinking or how they thought it was going to be good. You have to play like a pretty dedicated beast deck in order for this guy to be good. And Ball of Spiders. Me and Merps had a huge disagreement on Ball of Spiders, like absolutely huge. We ended up compromising somewhere in the middle, but I pushed it pretty hard, and he pushed it down pretty hard. I think this is an excellent card, and I think it reflects our playstyles, right? If you want to go aggro, this is a pretty crappy card because it's 6 mana and it puts out like less than 3 mana's worth of tempo on the board. But if you're okay playing the late game as Hunter, and you're also okay playing the aggro style if you need to, this is a great card. It's like Nourish, except for 1 more mana, you get almost 3 mana's worth of tempo on the board. You get like 2 mana's worth of tempo, probably. And then the cards that you get back are all beasts, and the cards that are on the board that he can't clear, and he probably doesn't even want to clear, are all beasts. This is like a ridiculous swing. Like, the next turn, you're right back into it. It does mean you're not pushing lethal. You may be playing it with another card. You probably don't want to be playing it and tapping. But if you're the Hunter and you're trying to play for card advantage, or if you're kind of even on the board and you're just trading, it wins you the game. And it's unexpected. No one will expect you to have it. It's like Nourish, right? Like, no one expects you to have something that draws you a bunch of cards. It's not even like Sprit. It's a rare card. So it has that mind games advantage. I really like this card. I would take it over almost all the rares, like, except for the very elite rares, right? Like, not over like a Sludge Belcher or anything, but you know, you get to like Knife Juggler. I'd probably still take the Knife Juggler, but it's getting very close. And Lock and Load is a card. Not a good card. I don't think I have to go down too far into saying why. Combo cards are just not good in the arena. And Stable Master, I love this card because I like this beast being immune thing, and I like the fact that it's a 3-mana card that you can just put down on the board if you need to, right? Big game hunter style. But it also allows you to have that Argent Protector effect, but just on beasts. So it's very hunter style, and it's a very powerful card. But it's an epic, so I don't care about it too much in terms of it being a little overpowered. But I really like this card, flavor-wise. And she's like feeding a unicorn, like the weirdest looking unicorn. Carrots. I don't know. Okay, so the last point that I'm going to cover before I go to bed is how does a fast deck like the Hunter, how does a fast class like the Hunter work with this slower meta, right? Like I talk about that I like to slow down anyway with the Hunter. Like I like having that as an option, because no one expects it. But how would a normal player feel if they normally go fairly aggro? Lots of 1-drops, some 2-drops. You kind of wait for that turn on turn like 6, maybe turn 5. Whenever your opponent does something that allows you to like send everything to his face and put him at like 8 health, 12 health, depending on how much you think that your board is going to be removed. How does that work in a slower meta? Well, it works really well, I think. I think it works better than it does in a fast meta. And why does it work better? It works better because your opponents are playing slower, right? If you're trying to go fast and your opponent is going slow, he better have cards that require him to go slow, and that allow him to go slow. And what TGT gives is high value slow cards, but they don't get their value until later. TGT didn't put out the way that Nax did with Sludge Belcher, the way that GVG did with a Noyotron and Anti-Keelbot. TGT did not put out a lot of cards that allow you to kind of stall the game out. It does have that 4-mana card that heals, and classes got their own heal cards, but they're all very lowly rated in the arena. The only one you kind of have to worry about in terms of consistency is that 4-mana card, like something Vendor, that's a 3/5 and it heals both players for 4 health. So you do have to worry about that card. But that card aside, the dilution effect of the Sludge Belchers, of the Sunwalkers, of the Noyotrons, that's going to have a huge effect for hunters, as in it's going to make hunters very, very happy. And if everyone's trying to use this Inspire mechanic and anti-tempo themselves, you have even more of this like gap, right? This like 1 or 2 turns period. The way to play hunter is that Merps likes to say this a lot. You just need 1 good turn and you win the game. Well, you now have more chances to do that 1 good turn if everyone's slowing down. So I said this before in the last video, and I'll say it again here. If everyone gets 30% slower because of dilution, because of odds, that doesn't mean that aggro gets worse. Aggro can still get 10% faster, 10% better, and the whole dilution effect will still make the meta slower, even if people try to draft more aggro because they want to do this. And there's another effect going on, right? Where if you're significantly more aggro than your opponent, you have a good chance of pulling off the aggro thing, unless they have board clears, and board clears are getting rarer, hunter aside, because of dilution, right? So all these dilution effects working in the hunter's favor. And on the other hand, if your deck is just a little bit slower than your opponent's deck, you're probably going to lose, because you're not going to rush your opponents down, and your opponent will be able to establish board control through the card advantage, and they'll win on the card advantage. So the fact that everything's slowing down makes people scared, makes it more costly for people to try to draft a fast deck, so that if you do have a fast deck, it's going to work out very well. And hunters can have a fast deck. The ability of hunters to get a fast deck has not gotten less. King's Elec is a slow card, but it's really like not a slow card so much as it's an overpowered card. As a 2-drop, it's just as good as almost all the other 2-drops. And you also get a little more consistency on the 1-drop side that you didn't have before with just a regular 2/1. So and even Bear Trap, right? Like, yeah, it's not an aggro card, but it is 2 mana, and you could have a Mad Scientist to pull it out, or I don't know, something like that. And Power Shot can't go face, but having it, the way to counter aggro if you don't have a board clear is to drop a lot of small stuff, right? Because then the next turn, you can use your small stuff to kill the opponent's small stuff, and it's not just one big thing that can only have one attack and kill one small thing. Well, Power Shot counters that very well. It's like a Cleave or a Fork Lightning, which are both still very good cards for aggro. So Hunter aggro is alive and well, guys. I still like the flexibility that all these cards offer to go more control, but if you're going Hunter aggro, this is going to be a good meta for you. So overall, the theme of the Priest, Warrior, and Hunter is that I don't think anyone has been looking at these classes and saying, oh, these classes are going to be pretty good in the arena coming up, right? These were the 3 worst classes in the arena right now. They're all actually getting, well, Warrior's not getting better. That's just because Warrior's got crappy cards. But the whole meta is changing towards them. It's changing against the Paladin. It's changing, but it's changing for the Warrior, Priest, and the Hunter. So that's all very good. And if you're wondering how I can say, like, oh, everyone's getting better except for the Paladin, it's because we have 3 classes left. And those 3 classes, with one exception, are going to trend the other way. They're going to, and I think people are getting this wrong, because the next 3 classes are Warlock, Shaman, and Druid. And people are pretty high, I think, on the Warlock and especially the Shaman, and I am not. I think those are 2 classes that are both going to get worse. And the Druid's obviously going to get better. I'm not crazy. I'm not like here just to like say weird things like, oh, the Druid's going to get awful. But I think the Shaman and Warlock are, and we'll talk about more of that in the next video, which will come out the next day. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please subscribe if you haven't and you enjoy the content. Follow us, like us, make comments. I would look at all the comments on YouTube. I respond to them. If you have any disagreements or if you have any further questions on what I'm saying, like, send the comments. I like to hear all the viewpoints, because, you know, no one really knows, right? We're just going out there and we're making a prediction here. And we could be wrong, but we'll see. We're putting it out there on video, on record, and we'll see how wrong we are about this meta. So see you guys, Adwikta, and next time we will cover the remaining 3 classes.